So this 1977 Sunfish has a hook here. So you have the main sheet from the mainsail you're pulling on. You can put it under the hook and kind of use that to hold it. And that's all they give you. So we're going to upgrade this with a pulley block, and this is a ratcheting pulley block, so when you turn it on it'll go one way but not the other way. And it has little square line or flat areas here that grab the rope. So you put the rope in from the sheet, and when you pull it, it's easy to pull. But if you go the other direction, it's hard to go out. Obviously you can release it by just letting go of the rope and it'll slide around the pulley, but it makes it easier to hold it in place. And we're going to also install the spring clip. Some people don't use the stand-up clips, they just have it hanging there. We're going to install the spring clip, and that has this clip cup that the spring goes on, and it holds this thing upright. And it still lets it swivel, but it kind of keeps it from banging around. So to do this, we need this guy. This guy is about 70 bucks. You can buy a $30 version. So there's different price points for your ratchets. And a stainless steel strap eye, and the hardware to mount that, and the stainless steel stand-up spring and the spring cup if you want that. They also have a little rubber boot that you can get instead, or nothing if you don't want anything. Mounting hardware never comes with these guys. You have to buy it yourself. I just got a number 10 by 24 thread machine screw. This is a Phillips head, and it has flat here and kind of rounded. I think it's called a truss head screw, and so that fits right in there. I got two different types of washers. I got the standard flat washer, which is kind of small, and then I got the fender washer, which is a bit bigger. And I believe we're going to have enough room under there to use the fender washer. And I could put the flat washer under the fender washer, but it's probably not required. And I got the nylon locking nut for the bottom here. Otherwise you'd have to use thread locker on it. All these are stainless steel, so they won't be rusting on me. Now underneath here you have about 2.5 inches till you hit the front of the cockpit cabin, so you need to get these in between there. And obviously you don't want it too close to your dagger board, because you need to put that in and out. So you're going to want to get it kind of back here. And this guy, those screws do connect in underneath. I'm going to take that off first, because after I put this on, it's not necessary, and those guys could get in the way of where I'm going to be mounting this thing. Now you might be thinking, hey, you got 2 screws from the hook, why not reuse them on the strap eye? And you could, but they're the wrong type of screws. You can see these guys have the little triangular opening there, and so if the strap eye needs a flat bottom, I mean, they'd hold it in, but they're going to stick up like that, and they're going to wiggle around a bit, so it's just not the right type of screw. Now these are 3/4 inch, and I bought 1-inch screws. I suspect I could get away with a 3/4 inch screw going through here, but I got the 1-inch screws. I can always make them shorter later on if I decide I want to do that, but I know this 1-inch screw will be long enough. In case anybody wants to know, the screw holes here are on 1-inch centers. I'm going to see if I can find a small cam cleat with 1-inch centers that might mount in the same spot. So I've positioned one of my fender washers and this strap eye kind of just by sight. I mostly just said, hey, I don't want it angled up, I want it kind of when it gets to the flat surface there, and I want it centered. And so when you measure here, the 2.5 inches is right at the edge of that washer, the flat washer, so I'm going to push it back just slightly. So I'm trying to make it so I don't have to make the edges of my washer flatten. I don't want to have to file the washer edges. If you get it wrong, you can just file the washer edges or go with a smaller washer. But about there is where I'm going to be putting this thing. So to help you visualize how this whole thing's going to go together, I took the pin out. You have to unscrew this little thing here. It's like a key ring. Take the pin out. This guy will be stuck down on the deck. This guy goes through it and up. That goes in there, and then you put the pin through to hold the whole thing in place. And then you have to get this thing back on the end of the pin. And if you're doing that with this spring, it can get very tricky. In addition, if you're using the spring, you need to have the spring cup up here, so that way the spring will fit in that region like that to hold this thing up. And to make that work, we are going to use zip ties to compress this spring while we're working on it. The hardest part of this is getting the zip ties to stay on the appropriate side of the spring. But if you balance it carefully, you can make it work. In an attempt to keep the fiberglass from cracking while I'm drilling it, I'm going to be placing packing tape over the top of the area I'm drilling in. And I'm also starting with an 1/8 inch drill bit, which is smaller than my screw. I'm going to be working up to the screw size after I get the initial hole. So the initial hole was 1/8. Now I have the 3/16 bit, which is perfect for a number 10 screw. It helps if you have a 3/8 inch socket for these nuts. Depending on the length of your screw, this may or may not work. You might need a box end wrench as opposed to a socket. And I'm not really twisting it with the socket. I'm going to be using the screwdriver on top to pull the nuts up. But first I'm going to put the fender washer on. And it fits perfectly. There's plenty of room here. It feels like I could have used a 3/4, maybe even as small as a 1/2 inch, but it's not sticking out below the bottom of this piece, so it's not really going to matter. Yeah, I ran out of socket to hold my nut, so I'm going to have to get a wrench. All right, 3/8 wrench. It doesn't need to be particularly tight, because the nylon lock washer is going to keep it from coming off. So now we have the strap eye. It's time to install this guy. We need the cup on the block. We need this guy through there. And we need the spring in that general area too. Incidentally, on the block there's a little metal tab here, And if you have that tab down, this guy will not rotate. I like it rotating, but you can set it to not rotate if you want. If you set it to not rotate, make sure you have this thing angled where you want it before you set it in. And I'm going to put the pin with the ring facing away from me, kind of just for visual preference. It doesn't really matter which way that goes. So then, you just need to get that ring through the hole here. So I'm going to use a screwdriver to pull this open and aim it where I want. And once you get it in, it's easy to rotate around. There we go. And you just rotate like a key ring until it locks in place. And my spring came out of that zip tie a little bit too soon there. Okay, so that's in. And then we can just cut these zip ties to release the spring. Diagonal cutters are the easy way to do this. Be careful when the last one goes, it will try to spring on you, so hold it down. And there you go. We now have a rotating, spring-held up pulley, ratchet pulley. Once you have your mast raised and your main sheet through both of the blocks on the mast, you want to put it through this ratchet, and you want to make sure you're putting it in the right way so that when you pull on the boom, it ratchets for you. And now you can hold this sail with minimal effort. If you want to let it go, off it goes. I have this bottom boom up at a recreational height. If you were doing this for racing, you might have that adjusted just a little bit lower. And my main sheet's a little bit long because I haven't trimmed it to size yet. I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this hook. Although it's not needed now, it'll be a place to keep it with the boat until I decide what I'm going to use to cover this, if anything. I might just keep the hook there permanently. Now the nuts that came out of here didn't have any nylon locks on them, so I'm just going to be putting a little bit of blue thread locker on them before I install them to keep them from sliding off and falling out.